We have reached the final session of the 2025 Widening the Pipeline Fellowship Training. And I think we've had just such a broad range of conversations that help us to really understand this moment that we're in. We've talked about some of the key challenges that journalists face. We've talked about the reinvention of media, the disruption that's going on. We've talked about politics. We've talked about social media, everything. But I think in this moment, what will serve us well as we move into 2026 is the contextual wisdom and insight that we'll be able to gain from our next speaker. Richard Prince is a veteran journalist, a columnist, a maverick, a historian. But in this moment, Richard Prince is probably best placed to help us in this room understand the potential and the opportunity of this moment, because we would be able to leverage his knowledge and his view of the past with our goals and our plans for the future. Richard, did you begin your career at the Washington Post?
Oh, no. I actually began, well, you could say I began my career in college because I was the co-editor of the newspaper. I was at New York University, NYU, and I majored in journalism. And we had a good time at the student newspaper, which is called the Washington Square Journal, after Washington Square Park, down in Greenwich Village, where the campus was. And I interned at a newspaper that was called the World Journal Tribune, which was a merged entity of three New York City news. New York at that time, this is in the late 60s or mid 60s, had I think 7 newspapers. And 3 of them, there was a big strike, and some of them dropped out or merged, and the resulting newspaper, which came from the Herald Tribune, the World Telegram and Sun, and the Journal American, was the World Journal Tribune. So I interned there, and it folded during my internship. And I found out on the subway when there was an honor box that said World Journal Tribune folds. And I said, uh-oh, that's my internship. So during the summers, I also spent the summers at the Newark paper, the Star Ledger. And that was most interesting because that's when that was in late 1967 when they had both the Black Power conference, which was this was in the Black Power era, and also the riots, uprisings. And so I was sent out there during the riots as well. And I covered that, like, my head down, just there were missiles flying and everything. And mostly the aftermath, the rebuilding. And then I came to, after graduation in 1968, I came to DC, and that's when I came to the Post. And DC had just had its own riot, which resulted in this building later on, the Martin Luther King Library, because it started because Martin Luther King was killed. And I came here, and it was the same thing. There was a rebuilding. That was the big story. How are we going to rebuild 8th Street and 14th Street and 7th Street? And who will get a piece of the pie? As well as the whole issue of home rule, which they're still fighting here now. But back then, the District of Columbia, which, as we all still know, is actually controlled by Congress and ultimately, and the president, was ruled by 3 presidentially appointed people, commissioners they call them. One of them, Walter Washington, who the convention center is now named after, decided he was going to be called mayor commissioner, then finally just mayor. And just to give people a sense that, hey, we are moving forward here, no matter what Congress says. And then finally they got the limited home rule that we have now, which can be taken away whenever Congress feels like it, such as when they cut the budget and they removed the Black Lives Matter streetscape. So anyway, so that's how I got started. And It's been an interesting ride ever since.
Interesting is probably the understatement of the century. Richard has just done a brilliant job of something that I have tried to stress over and over this week. Putting our lived experience out there, sharing it with each other, with our sources, even when we're doing stories. But I'm glad he took us to the Washington Post because in 1972,
right,
Richard and 6 of his colleagues were working at the paper and seeing the world as it played out each day in terms of beats and coverage, etc. And they realized that none of the journalists of color were having the opportunities to advance, get prime beats, do what they needed to do. But when I think of the courage that it must have taken for the Metro 7 to file a complaint with the Equal
Employment
Opportunities Commission, tell us about that moment. What was it like for you journalists to get to that point?
Good question. Well, there were originally 9 of us, and 2 eventually dropped out. We were all on the Metro desk of the Washington Post, which is how we got the name Metro 7. And we were all unhappy. And let me show you this, because we were talking about this earlier. This is the Washington Post from Monday. And they had we call these double trucks. But this is a 2-page, it's actually more than 2 pages. There's 2 more pages. And then there's a 3rd page. Okay. Now, what these pages all have in common, this is called the Washington Post Intelligence Councils. And these are people that the Post has picked to advise it on global security, energy and climate, and AI and tech. What they all have in common is there's not a black person on any of these pages. So, and this happened right after the National Association of Black Journalists and the Washington Association of Black Journalists had met with the editor, Matt Murray, who promised to do better. So these are the kind of things that were getting to us. If you look, you can see all of the documents that we had. We engaged in some correspondence with management over this whole issue. And we were very ordered and structured about it. We decided to put everything in writing. We decided that when we met with management, we would not get into any debates or anything. We would just state what it is, get their answers, and said, okay, thank you, we'll get back to you. And then we had our meetings, and we had, as an attorney, who did it pro bono, which was very good, Clifford Alexander, who was the chair of the he had been the chair of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So we had some expert advice in the area of affirmative action, setting goals and timetables and all of that. So what was it like? It was interesting because we all grew up during the Civil Rights Movement. And so this was our chance to show that we could assert ourselves just as well, in the field of journalism. So it was, so people say, well, how could you, it was just in our genes, And I was reading over some correspondence that we had. I kept a diary during that time. And I remember that some of us were talking about, we have to do this because, Black people have been, they need to assert themselves, and we just can't stand this anymore. And we have to do our part. So we did, and that's what motivated us, because if everybody else is out there asserting themselves in their fields, why shouldn't we? And so that's how the Metro 7 began. We exchanged memo. In fact, if you have your computers, you can look, all the correspondence is online, and all the news articles about it are also online. If you go to our website, journalisms.com, journal-isms.com, and you see a tab at the top of the page that says Washington Post Metro 7, and you will see all the correspondence and everything. And the direct impetus for some of these things is listed right there in the first correspondence, which was a series of 20 questions. We didn't make any demands, right? We just said, why is it that there are no black people in the sports department or in financial news? Or why is there only, in the District of Columbia, editors, none of them actually have ever covered DC? And why is it that there's only one black person on the editorial page? And in that year, Shirley Chisholm, who now her name is being resurrected, rightfully so, was running for president. And we said, well, why is it that the black people who suggested that she be covered are not part of that coverage? And on and on and on. Foreign news. Why was the Africa Bureau just closed so that people could cover some other parts of the world? And we just wanted answers as to, and why did this happen to this person? Why did this happen to that person? So we weren't making demands. We just wanted, why is this happening? What is your explanation for this? So we started off and we met with the editor, who was Ben Bradley, who became famous. This was also the same year as Watergate. So he said, look, we've lost our way. We got to talk, blah, blah, blah. And as I said earlier, no, we weren't interested in talking. We just said, thank you very much. We'll take your answers back and discuss them. And all of that finally led to a recommendation that the Washington Post adopt goals and timetables, which was an idea of Cliff Alexander's. That's how affirmative action works. You have targets that you meet, just like you have in any business, sales targets. We wanted targets for diversity, for hiring journalists of color. And Brett Bradley's response was, these are quotas. That was just like they demonized DEI and today they demonize quotas then. The only quota we're going to have here is a quota on quality. Okay, so that was his answer. So we said, okay, thank you very much. And then we decided to have a press conference around the corner at the Metropolitan AME Church, in which we announced that we were taking the post before the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Before that, we went to the DC Human Rights Board, and they said, yes, you have a case, go ahead. And the EEOC said also, you have a case, and you can go to court. However, we couldn't go to court because we didn't have any money. So that's because Cliff Alexander was doing this for pro bono, but after that, so we had to shell out. So we didn't get any we didn't make a court case out of this. But the impact was immediate and lasting, because this was 1972. They started making moves to make nice with us. That was a presidential election year, so I was sent to West Virginia. The West Virginia primary was a big deal at that time with the regular correspondent. Other people somebody got promoted. They started hiring folks. But more important, it motivated other people, first women, especially at the Washington Post. They organized, and they said, what's happening to us? Why come there aren't more women doing this, that, and the other? And then other papers saw what was going on, black people in other papers. So the Washington Star, New York Times, Newsweek, all around the country, people were saying, well, we need to do something about our situation. And one of the I don't know what I can call it irony or not, but the Washington Post was among the leaders in diversity at that time. And actually, until recently, it still was, because that's when I got there after applying for an internship actually from NYU, and I got and looked at this room, and I saw all these black people in all these positions, not just as reporters, but in the library, copy aides, dictationists. I said, wow, I was used to just be newsrooms where there was just one or two, So the reason, as one of the columnists, William Raspberry, a black columnist, wrote, the reason why the Post was targeted, I guess, is because, number one, they had a critical mass of black journalists who could do something, and two, when you pronounce these lofty ideals, more is expected of you. And so that's where that went. And so, as I said, it spread, and 3 years later, the National Association of Black Journalists was founded. And we didn't ask for any money or anything, but other people did. The women did. The Daily News got, I think, $4 million or something like that, in New York. So it became a monetary thing, but we were just interested in the principle, and we wanted redress, basically. So that's what that was.
I wanted you to hear that description because, quite literally, and this is without an ounce of hyperbole, their efforts are why each of us are in this room right now. Because it wouldn't have happened on its own.
Right.
I think that's the lesson that America is teaching us, particularly in this moment. Equity and fairness and access is not a given, which makes the necessity for us to really stay focused in this particular moment so important. I want to now ask you about this moment.
Oh, this moment.
I told Michael yesterday that one of the best descriptions I've heard recently about this moment is for media reinvention. It's like trying to change a flat tire on a car going 90 miles an hour down a steep incline.
My goodness.
What do you think of the words disruption and reinvention? Is this just a necessary phase that we're having to go through, or how would you describe it?
Well, we are in a fast-moving era, and the word disruption says to me how the media are changing and how the times we live in are changing. I said earlier that we are really part of a continuing of Black activism, Black history, and part of the Black history has always been whenever there's progress, there's always a backlash, and so now we're in the backlash again, and it's up to us to overcome the backlash, and that's what people are trying to figure out how best to do. In fact, we have a group called the Journalism's Roundtable, which is a meeting of journalists, meets every month by Zoom now since COVID. And last thing we discussed last subject was how Trump is affecting newsroom diversity and what we can do about it. And there were lots of responses to that, suggestions, but one of the main things is that Mark Morial, who is the CEO and president of the National Urban League, had gathered some pro-diversity people last January, the Legal Defense Fund, National Hispanic Media Coalition, Asian American Defense, I forgot the exact term. But anyway, all these groups got together to plan strategy. How can we counter this anti-DEI? And then they went up to the Hill to see Hakeem Jeffries, and they talked some over that. So I covered this, and then I said to Morial and people, I don't see any media people in your group. Would you like to have some? Oh yes, we want the National Association of Black Journalists and the National Newspaper Publishers Association, which is the Black press, the Black newspapers, their publishers. We would like to have them join our coalition. So that was a year ago, January, and nothing really happened with that. And I kept asking, well, Mark Morial has invited you to join. What's up? Thank you. So this particular meeting, Morial came back again, and we had the leaders of the Society of Professional Journalists, investigative reporters and editors, and the NABJ president, Aaron Haynes, and the local president here, Philip Lewis, and some other people. And so Morial laid it out again. This is what we must do. The media have to be part of this because you're the storytellers. We hear a lot about all the places that are abandoning DEI, but what about the people who are sticking with it? We don't hear too much about them. And there was just a study that came out, and he presented the study that showed that the public actually is for DEI, and that has not been publicized. Well, at the time, it hadn't really been released widely yet. So he presented that, and so we could write about that if we wanted to, or broadcast it. And the outcome was, during the meeting, the president of the National Association of Black Journalists, Aaron Haynes, said, "Oh, we'll be at the next meeting at the roundtable, because they're having one in January. It's coming January." And the president of Investigative Reporters and Editors, of Executive Director, I should say, which is actually the largest group of journalists, said that we'll be there too. And I forgot to mention the Newspaper Guild, which is the largest union representing, and SAG-AFTRA. Newspaper Guild represents newspapers and other print products. SAG-AFTRA represents broadcasters and people in Hollywood. And also someone from the National Writers Union, which represents freelancers. They were all there as well. And the Guild made the point that, the Guild president made the point that one way that we attack this is by having contract language in all the contracts that you have to release your diversity studies every year. You have to make sure, a lot of pro-diversity material, because that's how if you codify it and make them sign on the dotted line, then you have a lot stronger case for improving what needs to be done. And SAG-AFTRA said much the same, and SBJ as well. But those two, particularly the NABJ and IRE, Investigative Reporters and Editors, said they would be at that meeting, so they would have some input into what the ongoing strategy would be. So that's, again, a continuation. You go back to the Metro 7, a continuation. This is a continuing struggle, It didn't end there. And one of the things I always emphasize with people is you have to know your history, You have to know what came before you and where you fit in, how you can carry that forward. And so,
but I have to say,
yes.
Maybe I'm naive, and
Yes.
I'm too old to be this naive, but I was kind of taken aback by how quickly some of these things were dismantled, and NBC just cleared out all the verticals and whatever. Is that just a part of the ebb and flow in the cycle that we just have to accept?
No, we don't have to accept it. We can fight it, as Mark Morrell was saying. But the reason it happened so quickly is because Trump is in office, and these media companies had business before these regulatory agencies. And if they wanted to get them approved, they had to play ball. And so that's why they started stripping DEI from their websites and statements of principles. And NBC slashed these NBC verticals, which they call NBC Black, NBC Latino, NBC Asian American, and NBC Out. And CBS, in order to, they're owned by Paramount, they wanted to have a merger with Skydance, another big company, but that was before the FCC, and whose chairman, Brendan Carr, has come out against DEI. So in order to get that merger approved, they said, "Oh yes, we're against DEI too." And so,
are you suggesting that maybe it's just a tactic, and then after Trump is out of office, everybody will say, "Oh, come on back"?
We'll see. It depends on what comes after Trump. What comes with JD Vance is in there or whatever. But yeah, these are what's happened. Unfortunately, is the media company, which once was a collection of family-owned businesses, like here in Washington, the Graham family owned it for a long time before they sold it to Jeff Bezos. But these big companies have taken over much of the media, and they don't really think about it. Journalism sometimes is just like a small part of what they do, like Paramount Pictures. They have movie studios and this and that, HBO. So that these are businesses first and media products second, news media products second. Whereas before it was news media products first. And the business was, the business was there to support that, not the other way around. And so that's why things happen so quickly, one of the things.
I want to open this up because I want to give you the opportunity to talk with Richard, but one more question, and that is, tell us about how journalism started and why.
Okay. Well, it's funny you should ask that question, because there was just a study that came out. No, it was a study. The Neiman Lab, which is one of the journalism organizations, Neiman Foundation, has a product called Neiman Lab, and every year they ask for predictions, and you know about that, from various people about what will happen to journalism in the next year. And so Gary Pierre, I spotlighted this, who was the editor of the Haitian Times, which is actually based in Brooklyn. They cover the Haitian diaspora, and used to work at the New York Times. He said that what's happening now that must be addressed is the fact that more people are turning to community news, to their friends and neighbors and social media and wherever they can get the information on just how to survive and how to live day to day, rather than the mass media. And that the mass media, if they want to survive, has really got to get in touch with the average people. And that was demonstrated once again in the last election when so many people said, the main issue for us is the economy. Affordability is the other buzzword. If you talk to us about that, that will get our attention. Everything else is secondary, And so that's where we are now. The media need to, especially now in this era when there's so much social media, so much disinformation, and also so much lack of media literacy, because some people don't know the difference between a tweet and somebody who actually researched the story. It's really important that the media pay attention to what's going on with average people and address their concerns.
So that's how the idea for journalism?
Oh, yeah. Back to your actual question, is there's always been journalism. Even on the stone tablets, back in prehistoric, people want to know what's going on. So they'll find a way, and that's how journalism, quote unquote journalism, started. And later on, it became in parts of this country, in the United States, and probably other places too, vehicles for political parties and lines of thinking. So you had Republican newspapers, Democratic newspapers, Whig newspapers, and as time went on, they became less a vehicle for political ideas as the primary focus to businesses. And
thank you for the history lesson.
Yeah.
I meant journalism.
Journalism. I'm sorry, I thought you meant journalism. Here I'm going off on all this.
No.
All right, I'll be quick about this then.
We have to
Okay,
value our time with you.
Yeah.
So tell us about that part.
Okay.
It was 2002, right?
No. Well, that's when I went online.
Oh.
Journalism's, which is the name of my column. I'm sorry, you take off on that tangent there. Journalism started with the NABJ Journal, which was a publication of the National Association of Black Journalists. I was the co-editor of it. This is in the early '90s, and there were a lot of stories that we didn't have space for, or that didn't deserve a whole story. So they just became short items, and so we put them all together and we called it journalisms, and it became journal-isms because the journal in the title referred to the NABJ Journal. So journalisms, okay. So that was in print. Then in the 90s, and then in 2002, the Maynard Institute for Journalism Education, which trains people to become journalists and editors later on, had a leader named Doreen Maynard, who's the daughter of one of the founders, Robert Maynard. She said all the news websites that talked about journalism downplayed diversity and people of color. So she said, look, we need to have somebody that addresses our concerns. And so they brought me in, and that's how that started in 2002. And then we went our separate ways in 2016, and so that's where we are now.
Fascinating. Are there any questions? Let's open it up, because otherwise I will monopolize the whole conversation. So let's go here.
Testing. Okay. Hi. I'm Chloe Lee with Al Jazeera English.
Oh.
My question for you, you kind of touched on, but I wanted to, if you could give it in more detail of, I'm sure there's a lot of us in newsrooms where there's conversation amongst peers about doing what you and the rest of the Metro 7 did, which is something that is so courageous. In many forms of just basically like, I think Monique asked this yesterday, how do you advocate for yourself and your peers to higher ups? What were the conversations amongst you guys like in terms of like building up talking to each other about this is an experience I'm facing, and then leading that to an action of like joining together publicly, I guess.
Well, journalists in newsrooms always talk to each other, and in our case, we were talking because we were friends. We became friends, especially if you're people of color. You gravitate toward like-minded people, and so way we got started is we were saying, oh, this happened. Oh, really? That happened to me too. Oh, really? And so forth. And so, what are we going to do about this? This is we got to do something. And so one of our people, Leon Dash, knew Clifford Alexander, who, as I said before, had been head of the EEOC. And he said, well, I can. They grew up in New York together. Let's ask him. And he was happy to help, and said, well, this is what you need to do. You need to ask for some goals and timetables and so on. And this is how you go about it. You don't have a leader. We didn't have any leader because we didn't want anybody to have a target on their back, so that they could go after. So we switched people who presented every time, so they could not single out one person. And we were very strategic about this, and Cliff was a big reason for that. Yeah.
My name is Lionel Ramos.
Yes.
I cover state government for KOSU Public Radio in
Good.
Oklahoma City.
Good.
My question is about the appetite of leadership to help make these changes that the Metro 7 helped make, and what it looked like then for you guys when you went to have these conversations with the higher ups, and what it looks like now that you are kind of in, I guess, the echelons of the people that are seniors in the industry, and can you kind of talk about whether they're the same or different, or it looks like a lot of these appetites bank on the whims of one person, and so
Yes.
If you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, newspapers and broadcast outlets primarily are businesses. So we made the argument, and we continue to make the argument, that if you want to get more readers and subscribers and all that, you have to be aware of how the country is changing, demographically especially. And there are more and more people of color, and they want to be reported on. And if you want to grow your business, you got to cater to those people. And so that's the primary argument, and that's how the business imperative dovetails with the diversity imperative. And a lot of people recognize that. And in fact, some of these newspapers, like the Miami Herald, had a Spanish edition, El Nuevo Herald, and others did that as well. In Dallas, the Dallas Morning News decided to partner with the Texas Metro News, which is a black newspaper, weekly, and they would share information. So that Dallas realized there was a shortcoming, and the Texas Metro News realized that they could benefit from some of the resources of the Dallas Morning News. So that's happened, but there's the other side of that is a lot of news executives say, look, we're here, we're struggling, we haven't got time for this diversity stuff. We have to stay afloat, because there's all these news deserts that are cropping up now where there's no, there's no way to get news. In fact, this is an aside. I just finished writing about in Portland, Oregon, where the Univision station closed. So one of the former Univision anchors started his own newscast out of his basement. And he's delivering news that the people, the Hispanic community in Portland, want to know, particularly regarding immigration and ICE raids and all that other stuff. So there's an appetite for all that. And some people are responding to it and others aren't. So that answers your question.
What is the question?
It's about the money, right? Right.
Since you mentioned that, I wanted to ask you about the unity situation. When it first, 94, I think was the first year?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Around there.
Yeah.
I had high hopes
Mm-hmm.
that, strength in numbers. If the affinity groups could work together, whatever, it might have even been sort of a bulwark in this moment if we had all gotten on the same page. Why didn't it work out? For those of you who don't know, for a period of years, NABJ, NAHJ, AJA, and
Native American.
Native American, which is now the Indigenous Journalists
Right,
Association,
right.
would have joint annual conventions. And why did it stop?
It was about the money. It was about how they split up the proceeds, basically. And I think NABJ said, well, why are we splitting this? I'm not sure of the details, but it was like, why are we splitting this evenly when we have the largest number of people coming and contributing to this? Shouldn't it be done by proportional, And so that was part of the whole thing. There was a lot, in the beginning, there was some cultural differences that had to be ironed out, and they were ironed out. But in the end, it just came down to money, the split of how the resources would be allocated.
You think maybe in this moment we could be?
Well, some of them, it survives in some ways. Like I make an effort, to try to have people from all the groups at our roundtables. But some people make it difficult. For example, I didn't last year. I didn't go to the AAJA conventions or the NAHJ convention because they decided they were going to charge people to cover the convention, charge reporters like me to cover these doggone conventions. I'm saying, are you crazy? Here we are covering you, offering you a chance to get your point out there to the public, and you want to charge us like we were just ordinary reporters who, are just attending a convention. So I said, no way. And so we didn't go.
Well, I got to go to NAHJ.
Good for you.
Let me tell you, it was a time. I enjoyed myself.
Oh, good. But you didn't get any coverage.
I did my Instagram.
You get your coverage, but I'm saying the organization didn't get any coverage.
I was on the ground. Let me ask you about AI. Several of our speakers have talked about its role in reporting and in journalism, et cetera. And when I think of someone with your schedule, you are everywhere all at once, always trying to stay on top of, and you are staying on top of.
Thank you.
Do you use
No.
AI?
I mean, there are certain things that you can't avoid. For example, I like the idea that Google now has, where when you call up a search, you get an AI summary of what the question was, what the answer to the question is. So I like that. But as far as the rest of it, it's really it's a mixed bag because there have been studies about the racial issues involved, where darker skinned people are misrepresented and that kind of thing. And also, I don't know, it's just it's better to, the fact that people can come up with fake stories, that's the other thing. There was another one just on Facebook 2 weeks ago about Bill Whitaker of CBS News saying he was so disgusted with CBS that he was quitting. And all these people, thousands of people responded, oh, he's right, blah, blah, so and so. And some of them are journalists. Well, the whole thing was made up. And I'm saying, come on, people.
Well, I've jokingly told several people, I've been around so long, my brain is AI.
Yeah.
I have everything I need in there.
Yeah.
But I did an exercise with the journalists to start the training off. And I went to ChatGPT and said, write me an introduction for the National Press Foundation Widening the Pipeline Fellowship Program. It's the final training, and I want to convey a message to them. And you would all agree that it was pretty cool. I mean, I had to make a few tweaks, but it literally did that. And I think the thing that I grapple with is that's scary. I grew up watching science fiction movies where the robots took over the world.
Yes.
And so stuff like that sort of freaks me out.
Yes.
But other speakers have said AI won't replace humans, but humans who don't adopt AI will be replaced. What do you think about that?
Well, humans are being replaced anyway.
Well, when you look at it like that.
If they can get a robot to do your job, what do they need you for? And that's part of the big picture. I mean, you can't fight progress, but you can try to steer it in the right direction.
I saw something just the other day. Has anybody heard about Chat GPT Black?
Oh, I didn't know about that either.
I'll send the link.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just saw it yesterday, and it's fascinating. I think it's addressing this issue of large language models, if they are all only contain content from white, European, whatever, it's not going to reflect us. So that's what's so important. I told you Michael McCarter was here yesterday. Tell us about what you're working on trying to do a journalism conference.
Yeah, I have been so busy I haven't got a chance to get to that one yet. Michael McCarter, I first encountered him when he was in Indiana, I believe. And we did a story about, or I did a story about using mugshots of suspects. And he said in his paper, they would absolutely not do that because it puts people in a bad light. It's, when they, they're at their worst, and it's not representative. And there are other pictures of the person that they could use other than the mugshot when you go to the police station and terrorized. So I said, oh, that's interesting. And I wrote about that. And since then, a lot of other newspapers have stopped using those. And now they're even, as a matter of fact, there's movement. Some people, when they are cleared or their crime is long in the past, would like newspapers to just expunge all that stuff from the websites and everything, because when you Google them and this comes up about you being arrested, even though you were later cleared, it damages your reputation. So I I first encountered them there, and then later on when there was an opening at USA Today, they fired, I think, Terry Samuel, was a black journalist, and they put him in there as a replacement, subset for interim. And so I counted him then. Then he left. They hired somebody else who just left. She just left the other day, and now he's acting again. So I'd like to talk with him because I haven't really spoken with him yet. But
we got your contacts.
All right.
But is that an indication again of this whole reinvention disruption thing? If Gannett and USA Today Co. can't keep an editor at the top, it's because of this tension between sustainability and bottom line. That's been the perception of many major media companies throughout the year, that they put profit before whatever. What's going on that got this?
I don't know the particulars of that, but the Gannett Company, which has now renamed itself the USA Today Company, was bought by another company called, what is it? Begins with a G. But I can't think of it right now. But anyway, so it's not really the same Gannett Company that used to be. They're sort of a minority within this other media company. So I really don't know the answer to that. We'll just have to.
Your suspicion?
Restate the.
They've rebranded themselves.
Yes.
They've got a new mission or whatever.
Yes.
But it seems to me that the bottom line tension is profitability.
It's always profitability.
And I know, and I guess again, I'm still too old school.
Yeah.
I really want to feel like the mission and the voice for the voiceless or whatever. But
well, when you're a public company and you have shareholders, you gotta be accountable to the shareholders, otherwise they'll boot you out. And so you've got to be innovative about how you make money and yet fulfill your public responsibilities. Some people would rather, like these hedge funds, just make the money and forget about the public responsibilities. And that's unfortunately the case with too many of these companies these days.
I want you to say a word to the journalists about the whole issue of layoffs and restructuring and
yeah. Well, I'm glad. Well, that's another thing we talked about. I mentioned on our last roundtable where we talked about how to cope with Trump's anti-DEI posture as it affects newsrooms. And one of the answers came from Roland Martin, who's a big entrepreneurial journalist. He's got his own channel and all that. And he has preached, he's now vice president for digital of NABJ, that you've got to stop thinking of yourselves as employees and think of yourselves as me, Inc. Me, Inc. In other words, I'm looking out for myself. I'm not just an employee of so-and-so company. If I can do better, freelancing. Like maybe I should try that. If I should have a company. See, people now work for companies, but I mean, the savvy ones, they have their own Substack also. In fact, Phil Lewis who's now the president of the Washington chapter of NABJ, he works for HuffPost. He's deputy editor, but he also has his own Substack channel that is very profitable, and he's been called the Anderson Cooper of the internet.
We had Kirsten Garris
yesterday.
Yeah.
Good. So.
Do you have a Substack?
No, because I people have suggested that, but if I have my own site, what do I need a Substack for? I have not satisfactorily answered that one. So anyway, so the point is that think of yourself as, as an entity among yourselves. Now, in my own situation, people say, why haven't you, retired or whatever? What I'm doing now is the culmination of all the things I've learned over the years. Being an editor, being a reporter, having all that stuff. Why should I stop now when I'm finally getting to the point where I can put all this to use? They say, and this is what if you were to ask me for advice for all journalists, it is get all the knowledge you can about everything. Because you may change jobs, as Roland might say, but they can't take that away from you, what you've learned on the job. All that I find it useful every day, how to do this, how to do that, how to do the other thing. But also, the journalistic mission and standards are very important. And you can carry that forward too. And I'm surprised that everybody doesn't feel that way in journalism. I mean, all this stuff about anonymous sources, I was told this, and publishing stuff without checking. I mean, you don't do that. Yeah.
Sorry, just really quickly. I had a question just because so much of what you said, like you're dropping like years and names, and I think something that I'm working on, and I think I've had conversations that others are working on, is truly understanding the history that came before us to understand this moment that we're in. So what would you say is like a key piece of like journalism history that you feel like this generation of journalists should know to move forward and to continue?
That's a good question. Think about that one. Oh, I thought you were going to ask her a question.
No.
Okay. All right, a key piece of journalism history. I think journalism history is just part of the larger history. And so I would have to go back to, just all the things that have led to, like Brown versus Board of Education. That had a major impact on schools, which have a major impact on journalism. So it's not just the journalism, it's what came before. I had I got an award from the local SBJ chapter a couple months ago. And the subject that I picked was, oh my God, I can't even feel it. Well, it was about respect. That was it, respect. I talked about respect and how it affects journalists, how it affects Black people in general. But I went back to the Dred Scott decision of 1848, 58, something like that, where the Supreme Court ruled that Black people have no rights a white person is bound to respect. Okay. Now, how does that affect journalism? It affects it in every way, because that whole attitude carries forward, So it's not just about journalism, it's about the context in which journalism exists. So that's how I would answer that question.
Nicole, and then.
Hi, Nicole from Minnesota Public Radio. Yes, I've been here. So my question is, you seem like a man full of wisdom, and
thank you.
You've seen
Just an act.
You've seen the journalism industry evolve through many decades,
yes.
And it's changed so much. I'm wondering if there's any journalism practices that you mourn or that newsrooms now are kind of losing from old school shoe leather journalism, and maybe like remind us the roots of that now.
Okay. Well, check everything. That's the bottom line. So don't print rumors. Don't run something just because somebody said a source said this, a source who won't be identified. Make when you do something, make sure there's not going to be any possibility of having to write a correction later on, because you've checked your facts. You know what you're talking about. I was at it last week. They had Andrea Mitchell of NBC News, and they presented her award at the Foreign Press Association, and they asked her, for her advice. She said, learn everything, know about everything. When you ask a question, ask another question. Keep asking questions of everything, and know more about the subject that you're interviewing somebody about than the subject himself knows. So I passed that along.
I'm
Hello.
Alicia Brown, Reproductive Rights Today newsletter author at State's Newsroom.
Okay.
Lately,
Sorry, Allison Bethel is with the States. Is the States Newsroom? Because she's got one called States.
State report, something.
Something. Yeah, that was different. Okay.
State Court Report, right, or Affairs, yeah,
Oh,
similar.
okay.
But
Got
different.
it. Okay.
Lately, I've been thinking about over the past few years how in my ethics classes, I was never taught that Janet Cook and Jason Blair were Black. Taught about them, but it was never mentioned that they were Black. And of course, Janet was found to have fabricated stories at the Post, and Jason, around 2000, found to have plagiarized and fabricated at the Times, and their careers ended. Did the Cook and Blair scandals lead to less recruitment and more distrust of Black reporters within the newsroom?
And what was the last part?
Did it lead to less recruitment of Black reporters and more distrust of them within newsrooms at the time?
Particularly Black women. In the case of Janet Cook, when she was at the Washington Post, and Black women particularly said they began to be less trusted, and because people said, "Oh, you may be like Janet Cook," and as a matter of fact, well, I don't need to get into this, but I will anyway. NABJ has a film out about its history, 50-year history, because this is the 50th anniversary. And in the film, one of the founders says, well, when NABJ started in 1975, no newspaper had more than 3 or 4 Black journalists. I said, what? You just heard about the Metro 7, where we had 7 just on the Metro desk, And Brett Bradley told us at the time they had 26 Black journalists on the newspaper. So I asked NABJ, I said, would you please correct that? Well, no, not really. The founders didn't want that corrected. So somebody wrote me and said, the reason Black journalists should be particularly concerned about accuracy is because of Janet Cook and Jason Blair. The old saying, as I said, history is, you have to know your history. The saying was, you have to be twice as good, and you don't get twice as good if you refuse to correct what needs to be corrected, particularly in a climate when distrust in the news media is so high right now. So that's my answer.
I have to quickly jump in and say that in December of 1982, I wrote a Newsweek My Turn column about Black English. Ben Bradley called me the next June and said, I want you to come and work at the Post. And I thought, after Janet Cook, you want a Black woman to come and intern at the Post? I went to the New York Times first. Because they called me.
Yes.
But then the following summer, I'm sitting in my parents' attic.
Yes.
And thinking I'm just going to write a Nobel Prize winning book and I'm going to be a freelancer or whatever. Ben Bradley called again.
Oh, wow.
And said, you have to come to the Washington Post.
Wow, that's great.
So I interned there in the summer of '84.
How did you like it?
I was too completely overwhelmed for the most part. But it was great. It was a wonderful experience. So
overwhelmed. That's interesting.
Yeah.
We got to talk about that.
Hi, I'm Trayvon with Bloomberg Law. I want to pick your brain a bit on the business model of journalism. Earlier this year, we had a content creator of sorts come to speak with us that was a news influencer, I believe she described herself to be.
Kelsey Russell.
And when I think of more people coming up that are like news influencers, and I think of the advent of AI, how that's progressing, and then also Substack and things. I guess, do you see the business model changing? We're at like this inflection point where the business model is changing to a more like independent contractor rather than full-time employee of a journalist. Like, do you see that kind of inflection point occurring?
I don't know. That's one of the things that came up at our meeting last time when we talked about how journalists need to think of themselves as independent creators instead of just as employees. So if you want to work for a company, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. But the response was that being on your own as an independent is nice to say, but it's not so easy to pull off. And you really got to know what you're doing and talk with other people who are doing it and find out the business model that will work best for you. You get health benefits and all these other things that you get with the company, but at the same time, you can be laid off at any time too. So just look out for what's best for you and your own situation. That's the best I can say.
Take maybe one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my name is Tamia Folks. I'm a reporter for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
Ah.
I was wondering if you could just talk about, I think our generation, maybe not uniquely, but kind of is experiencing maybe a loss of journalists of color from both ends of the newsroom. We're seeing a lot of young people laid off, and then a lot of the people who have set the standard in these newsrooms for being advocates for diversity and inclusion and things of that sort are retiring. And so I'm wondering if you have advice for people who maybe are left in that vacuum for taking on both leadership and also not getting burnt out, trying to, I guess, do a little bit of both and establish a career.
Well, the answer is network. Associate with other people who have what you don't have that you would like to learn. That's why they have all these journalism organizations, one reason, so that you can go to the workshops, you can have one-on-one meetings with other people who are like you, and just find out things, from other people. Oh, I didn't know that, And just like I said, when the Metro 7 started, started because we were talking with each other. They said, oh, I didn't, you too? So that's what I recommend, just join these organizations, read all the literature, and find people who are just like you or have similar outlooks. And you'll be amazed at what you might find out.
We have unfortunately come to the end of our hour, but I wanted to share this breaking news update.
Oh, hospice care again?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And this reminds me of
our roundtable.
Your round. Tell them about.
In fact, I want to invite you all to it. We have, I think I mentioned earlier, we have a monthly meeting of journalists called the Journalism's Roundtable, in which we discuss issues of the day and how they relate to diversity in journalism. So this coming Sunday, it's about 2 or 3 days from now, we're having one on Reverend Jesse Jackson, and with the reporters who covered him in his campaigns, presidential campaigns, and other people. We're going to have it on Zoom, but we're also going to have it in person right here in DC if we get enough people. So this just happened yesterday that we got the green light to have it in person. So you're all invited to come and see these journalists, hear what they have to say about Reverend Jackson. The purpose that I have in mind is that I want to be sure that when the time comes to assess him, that all the points that these journalists are making are taken into consideration. I can give you the information. You just email me or say that, yeah, I want to be there.
We'll put it in our WhatsApp channel.
Okay. But you have to do it very quickly because this is Sunday coming up.
Okay.
So yeah, that's something.
Send us home.
Yes.
Most of us are going home. One person lives here in DC,
Mm-hmm.
or Trayvon. But send us home with a word of encouragement, advice, moving into a new year in America in this tense moment. What would you tell these young journalists of color?
Okay. Be happy and grateful that you are journalists and that you have the license to do a lot of things and learn a lot of things that other people don't have. You can't, other people can just, you can't just walk up to somebody and say, oh, why do you do things the way you do? As an average person, they'll say, why are you asking me this? And who are you? But if you're a journalist, you can do that. And journalists, one of the reasons we're journalists is because we have an insatiable curiosity. And so this is a great way to satisfy that curiosity by being a journalist and letting other people know what you've learned. And you will find out that the more you learn, the more you feel that you need to learn. And so you keep going and going and going, and pretty soon, you'll be the expert in your circle of people who really know what's going on.
I said that was going to be the last question, but how do you keep your energy level up with all the travel and all that?
It's a thank you. It's really, if you love what you're doing, it's not really work. It's doing something you like. Like there was, for example, I went to Best Buy the other day, and there was a guy who just really was into fixing computers and everything. He knew everything. And then he was gone, and he's doing construction work now, they told me. I said, construction work? I mean, he's doing it for the money. Doing it for the money is not the be-all and end-all of life. Doing what you love is. So do what you love is my advice.
Well, in the 3 years of this program, I've only asked one time for the journalists to give a standing ovation.
Oh my
and
goodness.
That was when Bobby Bowman.
Yay, Bobby.
Last year. She was another. But I think at this moment it's very appropriate if we all give Richard Prince of journalism, veteran journalist, a standing ovation.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. And I clap back at you.